another episode of The Initiated Man here at the Soul Path podcast. So, fascinating one today. I am discussing with Nemanja Sonero, who says his purpose is to invoke the conscious awakening and rise of men and women in this world to serve as a vessel of love and inspiration for humanity. Nemanja, for 24 years full-time, has taught over 70,000 people across the globe in person and reached millions through his online programs and videos. He is very passionate about life, and the more that he's spoken to that passion in life, life has answered back to him passionately. So I look forward to you hearing some of the soundscape from this discussion, because Nemanja carries a lot of experience, not just in men's work, but also in working with men and women, and speaks about some of the different shamanic initiations that he's been through, some of the different traditions that he's worked with, from the Americas through to the Orient. And so, without further ado, here's the next episode of The Initiated Man. Enjoy. I was going through your website earlier and noticed a couple of themes that kind of stood out to me, being around masculinity and themes of embodiment, but also relationships as well. So talk to me, I guess, a little bit about how you came to be coaching people and offering work around those themes.
Well, first of all, thank you for inviting me to your podcast. Pleasure to be here. And as for these themes, they came quite spontaneously or naturally through living and also at the same time needing certain types of help in my life. I grew up in Belgrade in Serbia, and my father primarily was not fully present with us as kids. And I mean by that, when he was with us, not fully present, and also he was not many times with us in flesh. So I did not always have the male masculine presence that I believe children do need, and I needed in that moment. So yeah, over time, because then my parents got divorced and I was raised by my mother most of the time. And also, as I'm a professional dancer, I was spending a lot of time in dance studios where there was also mostly women. My teacher was a woman, and then my colleagues, my other dancers were women. So I spent a lot of time around women, and I would say the feminine. So that means I've longed for equally to be around men, even though I didn't know that space. So it was a bit of a longing for something I don't know so well. I started to also then train martial arts, and then I had male mentors, male teachers, and that really shifted a lot in me, and understanding that I need men around in my life. So I believe step by step, if I look chronologically backwards, I see how these men that I had, these mentors, they became almost like my fathers, my grandparents. They're like a men who basically helped me raise myself through life. And eventually, over time, I kind of got introduced to men's work. And as I was already teaching dancing and martial arts, and I already was quite deep into spirituality and psychology, that's why I say from the start, spontaneously, I began mentoring men, and bit by bit, getting more into that world, coming to this place now where I work with men, and I really enjoy that, truly. And same with relationships. I have been in many relationships, and they failed again and again and again. They just didn't work as I imagined so. And over time, I realized also because of my childhood and my parents, and I mentioned my father, I carried a lot of trauma. I carried a lot of, um, yeah, confusion around who I was and how do I operate in a relationship. So these are the two elements, men's work and relationship, that came through my own need for these things in my life. And later on, as of course I got more experience, I began supporting others. So this is a bit of a, in a nutshell, short version of this.
Interesting. And you
Yeah.
spoke about the need to know who you were.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Hmm. Well, needing to know, of course, on a soul level who I was, like who I am in this world, like why am I here? So that from that also perspective, but also as a man, what does it mean to be a man? It was very confusing for me as a child, because I was surrounded by also other boys, but they also were completely confused about why are they here. Many of them also were raised without a father. So I simply did not know also how to be a man. What does it mean to be a man? So that's still an exploration in my life. My unique, I would say, frequency, who I am and how I want to be in this world as a father, as a partner, as a coach, as a mentor, and yeah, especially in that time in Serbia, we had wars in the 90s. We had two. So being raised in that environment, also with a also political side where the men that were leading the country were doing a very poor job. So for me to see how does a man should behave, especially in a leadership role with responsibilities, I just did not have good examples. So I
Hmm.
would say that's quite confusing for a little boy or a teenager. Okay, how do I navigate myself in this world? Should I be like this, like that? So that was very, very confusing. And I guess because I'm a curious person, I have a very curious eye. Uh, what I've been observing, and I didn't speak much as a child, I was quite quiet. I was observing, watching men how they behave, and also most of the time didn't like it.
Hmm.
So that's what I mean by exploration. Like, who am I? Why am I here? How should I behave as a man? And then again, entering relationships and basically having a whole shit show because I just don't know how to do that too. There was no manual. No one showed me how to be in a relationship, how to communicate with a woman, how to approach her, how to treat her. So all these things, I would say, in the modern civilization, men are kind of left to figure it out on their own versus initiations which we had in the past in the tribes. And I lived in a few tribes around the world, and I've seen how they support and help men build to a certain point where there is a transition from a boy to a man.
Hmm.
And I would say this is the help I was longing for, even though I didn't know I actually needed that. So I would even say it's kind of intrinsically in me, or I would say maybe perhaps all men, that we need and want that.
And you spoke about this theme of knowing what it means to be a man.
Yeah.
Where have your curiosities taken you in relationship to answering that question?
You mean today?
Yeah.
Well, it led me to a place where I have very strong beliefs, loosely held. So that means I'm still in a space of exploration and being open to change my mind. So I have very strong beliefs in what I stand for in this moment, and I'm ready in a year to completely shatter them. So
Mm-hmm.
that means in this moment in my life, I see a new paradigm of a call for a man how to be in this world. And that means for me, it's a union of how men have been across space and time for hundreds of thousands of years, and at the same time, the embodiment, I would call it for now, the union of masculine and feminine within. And that means a man who can, in a healthy way, embody the masculine and the feminine. And the feminine within means not being more of a woman, but simply the qualities of the feminine, more receptive, more in tune to to intuition and to the divine, to also when a man brings his, for example, warrior energy, there is a certain connection to the heart, because without the heart, the warrior becomes a tyrant, becomes an abuser of power. So that's what I mean. A new paradigm of masculinity is the wholeness, which is the meeting between the masculine and feminine within.
Hmm.
Yeah. So that's kind of the start of that. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, that's cool. That makes sense. And what were some of the key experiences that led you to uh, landing to this place?
Well, there's a few. Some of them were my teachers, and again, what I shared in the beginning, the lack of fatherhood in my life led me to connect more to the feminine because of the woman in my life. So there's, of course, there was a beauty in the lack of fatherhood in my life, which is, yeah, I managed to be more around women and understand how women operate also in their own way, but also how my own femininity works because I did not believe, at least in our culture in Serbia, there was not like a, no one talks about connecting to their feminine. It's like everything is quite Balkan butch men traditionally, which is again beautiful, but how I did it, that was my entry point and developing my emotional side and understanding also what is happening in my body, what happens when all these emotions arise, what should I do with that? And it led me to, over time, through certain workshops and teachings and my own teachers, actually getting the confirmation that that is the path. Because in India or the East, they always speak about this Shakti and Shiva, yin and yang, the balance between the two. And then I realized that in the Eastern cultures, along also in South American and African, there is a union that occurs. There is a union of these two energies and the polarity between them. So that was a confirmation that what I did was not wrong. It was actually helpful. And then I started to, again, develop more my masculine, finding the dance between the two. So I would say this also made me understand the new paradigm of this world, which is needed if we're going to evolve as humans into stopping all these fucking wars all the time. And sorry if I'm cursing in this podcast, maybe it's not allowed. So
Oh,
the
good.
point that, all this, when we see the conflicts constantly around the world, for me, this is also because there's a disbalance and disconnection from the other part of ourselves. And the lack of the union is missing, and that creates never-ending conflicts.
You mentioned earlier that you spent some time with tribes. I'm curious which tribes you spent time with and how's that influenced your journey as a man?
Well, one of the most beautiful ones, I lived in the jungle in Brazil, in the Amazon. It's close to the border of Peru. The tribe is called Yabonawa. And I would say that was one of the most impactful journeys I had, as they have also a long history around also these balances that I'm talking about and connection to the divine in a bit different way. So I was studying plant medicine with them, also their language and songs, and just their culture also. And they have a very beautiful warrior culture, which I really like. So they have a certain initiations into warriorhood. And yeah, they really impacted me in a few ways. One of them was, I would say, I would say forgiveness, because the history of that tribe is that they just called them the white people. White people came at some point and almost killed them all. The tribe was almost gone. Only I think only down to 200 people, because the white people came. They started to, yeah, we have more and more people there for the rubber from the forest. So the tribe was basically almost destroyed. And they managed to rebuild themselves now to thousands again. And they always say, we do not hold resentment towards these people who came and destroyed our tribe. We feel we want to help and support and help them heal. That's why they opened the door to me and many others who were there, because they have this forgiveness, deep, deep forgiveness within themselves to move on and to support the humanity as a whole to heal and grow from there, which is fascinating. And yeah, I learned a lot. Also the warrior part, but also, like I shared, forgiveness and just union and what does it mean to be human and coming together from different parts of the world and simply being together and exploring life.
And when you speak about the warriorhood from their perspective, what differences can you speak to in terms of how someone listening to this that may not have had exposure to indigenous culture, maybe perceiving the word warrior as opposed
Yeah.
to what you witnessed over there?
Well, the warrior, it's a good question because the warrior today, for example, me living in Amsterdam, what does it mean to embody the warrior archetype? Like, I'm not gonna here fight or draw a sword or whatever weapon, but there is a certain energy, and that is the archetypal work, an energy to embody, to work with, and then implement in my life nowadays in a bit different way. So the energy is still required, I would say. And that means, for example, the warrior knows where he's going. So he's from his gaze to his intention, to the way he walks, the posture, to what he stands for unapologetically. That is for me a warrior energy. And for example, in Australia, you had guys, we had Novak a few times coming, the tennis player. And what I love about Novak when there was this whole Australian chaos, when they held him on the border, he stood and he said unapologetically, "This is what I stand for. I'm not backing down." And he did this multiple times. And for me, this is a warrior energy where the, I will stand tall in my belief, even if I have to stand alone, and I will not move. So for me, this is a warrior energy. And you can see this also on the tennis court, how he plays. He just has that spirit within him. So this is one of the elements I would say nowadays we can embody the warrior energy. There's a bigger, of course, range, but in the tribe, it's very similar. And they do need the warrior energy literally, which is they have an initiation for the warriors, and that initiation is a 3 month, for example, one of them, a 3 month diet where they have to be isolated in the jungle, living alone. To just enter the diet, they have to find a certain snake in the forest. They have a few days only. They have to find it, they have to kill it, and that will be the start of the initiation. If they don't find it, they cannot do it. And only a few people in the tribe did this. So I met a few of those warriors. They were living, one of them was living close to me to help if needed. And his energy is fascinating because he's literally calm, but ready if needed to shoot. He always has a gun close. To attack, he always has a machete with him. And there was one moment when one guy was bathing in the river, in the little stream actually, and a big snake started to just through the water run towards, like run, how do you say, crawl towards him to attack this guy. And this warrior, literally from I don't know what distance, saw the snake, boom, straight in the head, shot, one bullet. So just that determination without flinching, just boom, that energy I want to have more in my life. We're making decisions around my business, around what I stand for, around what needs to be done without postponing it. Uh, I want to stand with that energy and have it more in my life. And I feel this is a crucial energy, especially nowadays. Again, we see men struggle with their purpose, struggle with their mission, struggle to get out of the bed, many. So that's why for me, warrior energy is crucial as a part of the whole of what does it mean to be a man.
Mm-hmm. I'm curious, what else did you see over there in relationship to men and manhood that there's more opportunity for in the modern world?
Mm. Leadership, the the tribe chief, his name is Matsini. He, for me, carries really leadership because he's responsible for, I believe, almost 2,000 people. So he carries a responsibility every day as the moment he wakes up to check what's needed for the tribe, for each individual and the whole,
Mm-hmm.
which is a huge responsibility. So I would say teaching me responsibility and to embrace responsibility instead of backing away. And sure, it's not easy to have a position like he does, and he struggles a lot, financially, how to, excuse me, feed the tribe, how to navigate conflicts within the tribe. But again, what I saw with him, just his energy, was how he stands. Like he's shorter than me, much shorter, but just his body, like a tree, like very rooted and grounded. How he speaks, how he conducts himself in the space, how he also leads the ceremonies we were in. His voice when he sings, the stories he tells. Really, really, I would say that is an amazing example of a leader. How I would see a leader, how I wish there were more leaders in politics, for example. Someone who's equally compassionate and like on point when needed, very direct. So that is the balance I've been speaking from the start. You can call it masculine, feminine, you can call it whatever you want, but there is a certain balance of openness and groundedness. So I really, really learned a lot about leadership and embracing leadership. Uh, and that really impacted me a lot in my work, in my life, in my relationship to this day. Yeah.
And aside from the Warriors initiation, did you witness or hear about any other kinds of initiations that they have for men?
Um, for men specifically, no. I did one, which is a 1 month diet, where for 1 month I was isolated. There was also other people in their own little cabins, but we were isolated from the tribe. I was in my own little 2 times 3 meter cabin. And for 1 month, I had every second day I had a ayahuasca ceremony, which was quite intense. So we had, I think, 17 ceremonies in 1 month, and then exploring hape, like the tobacco. 1 month, uh, there was no water,
Water.
so 1 month I haven't drank water at all. That's part of the initiation,
No
part
water
of
for the.
the yeah, no water for 1 month. So that was quite. I think that was one of the most difficult parts. So we drank this little thing called kaisuma. It's like a potato chewed and then boiled, and then it's like a strange, liquidy, yucky thing. So that's the only thing I had like a half a glass from time to time. But yeah, 1 month zero water, and not just zero water, but also almost no food. So we would have maybe one meal per day, very small meal. So I lost a lot of weight, a lot. But the moments where I was losing perhaps my focus and feeling exhausted physically, what this diet taught me is to find an inner strength, which is beyond the body. So it was, when there's no water, there's no food, there's just like you, and you have to be in a ceremony processing stuff with a plant medicine for 1 month. You have to find that inner strength. You
Yeah.
have to find like some source of energy which you didn't even know you have. Otherwise your life depends on it. So that was a very powerful journey. I learned so much about myself and what I can do actually. So that was a big initiation for me. But specifically for men, I don't know any other. Maybe I missed something. Maybe I didn't hear about it. But I know a few initiations. Some are 1 month, some are three. The longest one they have is 1 year.
Mhm.
Being alone in the jungle. This is for if you want to become a page or a shaman, whatever you want to call it. And yeah, for men, nothing else. Uh, I've seen men go into the forest. I've seen men, very young men, like 12, 13, with guns going to hunt because they depend. The tribe depends on them. So they
Right.
hunt boars, little deers, monkeys. So very young on, I would say men to take responsibility. Like 12, 13, it's considered already you're ready to serve the tribe.
Mhm.
You're not gonna play around with toys and Nintendo and whatever. No, no, you're gonna work, you're gonna hunt. So I would say men there very much earlier than modern civilization, they take on responsibilities.
Right.
So I would see them as men already early on.
Have you spent time with any other tribes?
Yes, less uh, in Malaysia, in Sabah, an island. I had a chance to meet one of them very shortly. Uh, in Brazil, when we were there, I would not call them tribe, but since very young age, I started studying different African and Southern American traditions
Mhm.
and also martial arts, but traditions and their language. So I started very early on to train capoeira. It's a Brazilian martial art, the traditional form. So there's a certain element of connect to the spirit through music and the circle. Uh, so I would not call it a tribe, but there's a tradition element coming from Angola, coming from their tribes, and the dance of the zebras and so on and so on. So from young age, I started studying all these things, which I really love: music, more spiritual, traditional music, connection to the body, embodiment, movement. Uh, but I would say Yawana was the main tribe that 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 really left the biggest impact so far as a tribe. But yeah, Angolan tribes and South American tribes and how they operate and their traditions I still study to this day.
And do you see yourself going back to the tribe in Brazil?
No, no, not at the moment at all. The diet was beautiful, but I do feel it was a puzzle piece in my life
Hmm.
needed in that moment. And to go to that tribe again, yeah, it means or I would do the diet or maybe go to their traditional festival they have every day, but I see no need at the moment for that. I see now
Yeah.
my mission and purpose is inviting me to step more into what I want to serve and what I want to give to the world. And just to get to that tribe is, phew, that's a days of journey through
Yeah.
planes and buses and canoes and, you know.
And so tell me a little bit more about the kind of work that you're doing. As far as men's processes of initiation and maturing, have you come across common themes that would be worthwhile to speak to?
In connection to initiation, in what way?
Well, we've spoken about the theme of what it means to be a man, right?
Yeah.
And we live a very different style of life to anything indigenous or how it once was, even if we just go back a few generations, like from Serbia,
Yeah.
where me and my brother are the first generation that didn't grow up on the land where all of our parents and grandparents did. And I'm sure if you go back two or three generations, it's probably the same story for pretty much everyone from those lands. And so
Mm.
life has changed very quickly in just the space of a few generations. In that change, I'm sure there's been a lot of culture loss that
Hmm.
previously would have given men some degree of initiation.
Mm.
So I'm curious, like with the work that you're doing right now, have you noticed themes that you're working with around, well, let's call them like the doorways of transformation? Are there consistent themes that you've been coming across that you find
Hmm.
yourself working with that you may have found to be interesting or curious? They keep presenting themselves.
Well, I'll start because you spoke about Serbia, and I remember as a child, my grandparents, well, parents too, but more grandparents, they're from the south of Serbia, and it's not even a city, it's like a village in the middle of nowhere. And I remember as a child when I would visit my grandparents, they they had a piece of land, and my grandfather was from my father's side. He was really working hard to plant. There was this huge field for days, if not weeks. They would just plant food and seeds and with uh, with all these different tools and a little tractor. And so early on, I remember I would actually be there to help. So as a child, to dig ground and to plant seeds, it's quite a job. Physically, I
Hmm.
was exhausted. Also, I was a skinny kid, and I remember in the middle of the summer heat, 30 plus degrees, I was exhausted, and I never had a certain initiation in my culture. But I would say early on, even though my father was not present when he was, I was working in the fields, helping
Hmm.
them. And in the winter, we would make ivar. I'm sure you know what is ivar. So we would go in this little hut and take paprikas and put them on the pan and burned and like so. I was working early on as a child, and perhaps that I don't know if that's an initiation, but it did teach me a lot about responsibilities, about like doing certain things physically, even though I felt I cannot. So I'm saying this because nowadays, especially in Western culture, in this sense, I would say kids have it quite easy. You know, it's quite easy to just go to the store and buy what you need. You don't need to do anything for it. So there's a
Right.
lot of convenience, which is also a part of the difficulties a lot of young men have today, which is never experiencing, I would say, physical and certain type of challenges. There are challenges, of course. Usually today, men are actually fighting more mentally. There's more mental challenges,
Mhm.
psychological challenges. So because of the convenience of the world and the Western world, we just created everything quite easy: electricity, food, whatnot. Um, there is not an element of a challenge, which perhaps historically would be a type of an initiation into manhood, into responsibility, again, and leadership, which I would say are masculine qualities also. So the men that I work with, of course, each case to each case, but many of them, what I notice, thrive really well when there's a certain challenge presented, but it's entered consciously.
Mhm.
So a challenge is created for them, whatever. Is it a program to study a certain ritual or whatever? They enter it consciously, so there's a psychological and spiritual shift that happens within them, bringing them more closer to what I would say this wholeness that I speak of.
Right.
So that challenge I feel is needed and necessary for men to have that transition, a more smooth transition. Otherwise, that transition, I would say, would like is almost like it's going to create itself in life in different ways
Mhm.
until men often break, divorce, illness, whatever. So I feel this challenge will still happen in their lives, and often because the one that was supposed to happen being led by someone or something or didn't. So this is what I often see. Men break, and this is often when they ask for help and support, unfortunately. I wish it was before. So there was then support. So when shit hits the fan, you have a brother by your side.
Right.
And as I would say that was the main difference back then and now, and why men's work is needed, so needed.
Yeah, nice. Well, while it wasn't formalized, I do feel like that time that you spent in the earth, working on the land, working with your hands, was definitely a form of initiation.
Mm.
I feel like it's rare to experience a quality of karmic reciprocation from the earth and that
Mm.
rootedness that you spoke about earlier, that you saw in the leader, unless you actually get your hands in the earth and you have some calluses on your hands and you know the
Yeah.
quality of cutting wood, you know the quality of I never lived in the villages in Serbia, but I do remember whenever we'd visit, we'd always have to go fetch the water from the well, and
Yeah.
that meant carrying a bucket. That meant pumping the well until the water actually started flowing, or throwing the bucket in there and pulling it
Mm.
out. And so I remember all those things, and so I feel like no matter how uh, complex the world becomes that we live in, the solution always remains embarrassingly simple. And it's always those
Mm.
simple things of returning to the way that things once were, you know, and the
Yeah.
way that they still are in an indigenous setting, where people are cutting wood, they're collecting their own water, and they have that very direct connection to the earth and to that which gives them sustenance to their bodies.
Mm. Beautiful. I completely agree with you. And you gave such a visual depiction of also what I had as a child, also fetching the water. And it's not just a memory. Even how you shared it now, I notice how your energy shifted. It's so for me, it's not just a mental memory. It's a certain experience which which leaves an impact. I deeply trust that these experiences tread themselves through life and they stay and they impact almost everything that we do. And this, I completely agree that, especially the part, with the earth and the callus and connecting again to the earth, which we are losing I live on a 14th floor on a building, beautiful apartment, but there's a certain distance from the ground for me that I miss
Right.
to feel the earth beneath my feet and the ground and just the trees. And I feel there's a certain disconnect. So we're planning to move, but these experiences for a child, especially, are so important because most of my kids from my class in Belgrade did not have this experience that I did, taking care of the cows, digging in the earth and working. So they never experienced that. And I do believe, like you, it would impact them in a profound way, even especially subconsciously. Somewhere in the background, it's working its ways. Yeah.
I'm curious, is there a theme around men's work, men's initiation, however you want to look at it, that you feel is important to speak to that we haven't covered yet?
Hmm. Well, what I'm noticing, I think, the most in the gatherings in person that I have with men in groups and also online is that just being around men, there's multiple things, but just being around men in a space where men can express themselves verbally, emotionally, physically, uh, and really feeling safe where other men are just witnessing and if needed reflecting, but literally just being witnessed by another man without judgment in whatever inner storm you're going through is already so healing for men. So just to have that space of safety, a safe container where you can just be your most beautiful, most ugly self and literally being received is so transformative. And it's not even a practice, it's not a ritual, it's not anything. You're just literally being in the center of a circle, being witnessed by all these men who are just in silence, like watching you, fully here, open, and you're just like expressing yourself, your pain, your whatever, is, I've seen it millions of times, so transformative, and it doesn't need anything else. Even just that very moment. And I feel this is one of the main key ingredients which we need today in the world, whether it's a group or the father simply listening to its boy, son or daughter, without trying to change it, just literally receiving them in their whatever is going on. So creating this culture of not trying to fix someone, but literally just listening to them and receiving and acknowledging that their reality in this moment is valid. I find this very important, and men's work can provide that specific nutrient being around men. And I know when I'm around men, even though I facilitate, even just entering the room and seeing all these men in the room, like, oh, there's a certain out breath in me and of relaxation and shoulders drop, and I'm like, oh, like I'm around men. And
Right.
I did not have that as a young man and in my 20s even. I had it, but indifferently. And nowadays I'm like, I have it so much more, and I'm like, oh, I can just be and not necessarily, I would say I have that in all areas of my life. When I walk down the street, yeah, I try to do the same, drop the shoulders, head high, relax in my body, but I feel the environment is different. So it's not necessarily welcoming for men in this world to be vulnerable, to be open, to share what's happening because there is a lot of judgment still to this day around men being more, yeah, not just being solid, not being this or that. No, just can men just also feel? Can men also be vulnerable and show that part of us that we're actually also hurt, that we're also healing. It's not just the women, it's also us. So I would say this is one of the key elements that I would say men's work and yeah brings and that we need more in this world amongst many others.
Appreciate it, brother. And for people that are curious to find out more about you and the work that you're doing, what's the best way for them to connect?
Well, social media is the easiest. Facebook, Instagram, my website is all the same. It's Nemanja Sonero. And I work mostly in Amsterdam in person. So we have once a month gatherings in Amsterdam, and I also travel around the world teaching men's work, also working with couples. So it's a bit different type of work, but it's related. And I have my online programs. I have soon now in March it's the sixth year, I think, sixth or fifth year of the Masculine Alchemy Mastermind. So it's an online journey, 6 months, for men to really take time also, to take time to embark on certain topics and to integrate, embody that in their lives. So it's only for 16 men, but I have it for 6 years, twice a year. It's really changed lives, also changed my life. So this is one of my most powerful programs that I do that I love deeply. So we start in March. But yeah, it's the same. Social media is the same name. And yeah, that's in short.
Beautiful, brother. Thank you so much for the conversation. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for invitation and yeah, thank you for giving space to these topics to be heard also. Because this is not about me, this is about, I would say, the work and what is needed in this world. So thank you for
Yeah,
that.
appreciate it, brother. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.